Good morning, everyone. Today, I want to talk about something incredibly powerful. Something that can shape your mindset, influence your actions, and ultimately determine the quality of your life. That power lies within you, and it's called positive self-control. The way we speak to ourselves on a daily basis has a profound impact on the mindset we develop over time. Self-thought is not just a string of thoughts floating in our heads. It's the internal narrative that gives meaning to our experiences. If our self-thought is encouraging and supportive, we tend to approach life with optimism and confidence. However, if it is filled with doubt, criticism, or fear, we are likely to adopt a mindset of defeat or limitation. This mental narrative becomes the lens through which we view every challenge, decision, and relationship. The unmeetable relationship and gulp among ill that makes up an absurd malarkey. This metal glamour. Every action begins as a thought. Before you apply for a job, take a risk, or even try something new, there is a moment of internal dialogue that either pushes you forward or pulls you back. Your brain listens to your words, even the silent ones. The messages you give yourself become instructions that your subconscious mind follows, influencing your behaviors and choices in both subtle and significant ways. Moreover, the impact of self-talk extends beyond isolated moments. It accumulates over time. When you consistently speak to yourself in a positive, empowering way, your mindset begins to align with that positivity. You start believing in your abilities, taking initiative, and recovering more quickly from setbacks. Conversely, constant negative self-worth leads to feelings of helplessness, low self-worth, and fear of failure. This eventually creates a cycle where negative thinking leads to negative outcomes, which then reinforce the original negative thoughts. Construct. It works the same way that Joe, we admire. In essence, self-talk is one of the most powerful tools we possess for shaping our lives. It is a form of self-talk that works silently but steadily. Whether we realize it or not, The way we communicate with ourselves affects how we feel, how we act, and what we believe is possible. Therefore, becoming aware of your self-talk and intentionally guiding it in a positive direction is not merely motivational advice. It's a transformative practice. By learning to choose words that empower rather than discourage, we can begin to change our internal landscape and in turn change the direction of our lives. Negative self-talk is often subtle and habitual, creeping into our thoughts without us even realizing it. It might sound like, "I'm so bad at this," or "I'll never be able to succeed." These statements, repeated over time, plant seeds of doubt that gradually take root in our minds. What begins as a fleeting thought eventually begins to govern how we see ourselves and what we believe we are capable of achieving. These beliefs do not arise from truth, they come from repetition. And yet, they have the power to shape our reality as if they were fact. When we constantly criticize ourselves or highlight our failures, we start to build an identity around those perceived shortcomings. We stop seeing ourselves as learners or doers and start viewing ourselves as inherently incapable. For example, a student who repeatedly tells themselves they are not smart enough may stop putting effort into their studies altogether, not because they can't learn, but because they no longer believe it's possible. This inner narrative creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. Our negative expectations lead to behaviors that ensure those expectations come true. In this way, our own minds become the biggest barrier to growth and achievement. Furthermore, negative self-esteem lowers our self-term, which is the foundation for confidence and motivation. When we doubt our worth or abilities, we become less likely to take risks or pursue new opportunities. We start avoiding situations where we might fail or be judged, further reinforcing our belief that we are not good enough. This can lead to missed chances, unfulfilled potential, and a life lived in the shadows of fear and insecurity. Self-esteem doesn't just help us feel better, it influences the choices we make and the chances we take. And when it is constantly torn down by inner criticism, our whole world shrinks. Perhaps one of the most damaging effects of negative self-talk is its ability to disconnect us from our true potential. We all have strengths, talents, and capabilities. But when we are stuck in a cycle of self-doubt, we stop nurturing them. Instead of focusing on what we can do, we obsess over what we can't. This robs us of our ability to dream, to strive, and to believe in the possibility of growth. It is not the lack of ability that holds most people back. It is the voice inside that tells them they are not capable. Overcoming this voice is essential to unlocking the potential that already exists within. Positive self-course is not about pretending that everything is perfect or ignoring areas where we need to improve. In fact, true positive self-course begins with honesty. It means being aware of our flaws, our mistakes, and our weaknesses, but responding to them with compassion rather than criticism. Instead of saying, "I failed, I am worthless," we learn to say, "I failed, but I am learning." This subtle shift allows us to face reality without losing confidence in ourselves. It recognizes that imperfection is part of being human and that growth is always possible no matter where we currently stand. By practicing this kind of constructive internal dialogue, we give ourselves permission to grow without fear of judgment. when we are not constantly tearing ourselves down, we are more likely to take responsibility for our actions and seek improvement. Self-worth and self-growth go hand in hand. You cannot grow if you constantly believe you are incapable or unworthy. Positive self-talk acts like a supportive coach. It helps you confront your shortcomings while reminding you that they do not define your entire being. This mindset encourages resilience because it's not rooted in a false sense of superiority, but in a grounded belief that you are always evolving. This approach also strengthens the foundation of self-worth. When we speak kindly to ourselves, we begin to build a healthy inner relationship that isn't based on performance alone. We start to understand that our value does not decrease just because we made a mistake or fell short of a goal. Self-worth becomes something internal, something that isn't easily shaken by failure, rejection, or comparison. With that sense of worth intact, we are more likely to persevere through difficulties because we no longer see challenges as reflections of our inadequacy, but as chances to demonstrate courage and perseverance. Moreover, focusing on growth and self-worth leads to a more balanced emotional life. Positive self-con helps reduce anxiety and stress by softening the internal voice that often magnifies problems. It makes room for reflection instead of panic, for solutions instead of self-blame. Over time, this healthy form of self-communication becomes a steady anchor in moments of uncertainty. When we replace harsh judgment with encouragement and acceptance, we empower ourselves to face life with openness and confidence. In this way, positive self-talk becomes a habit that nurtures not just success, but inner peace and self-compassion. Emotional resilience is the ability to bounce back from adversity, face challenges head-on, and continue moving forward despite difficulties. One of the most powerful tools in developing this resilience is the way we talk to ourselves during tough times. When we use kind and encouraging self-talk, we provide ourselves with emotional support that can make all the difference. Instead of sinking into despair or self-criticism when things go wrong, a resilient person speaks to themselves with understanding. This is hard, but I've been through worse. Or it's okay to feel down. What matters is what I do next. These words don't erase pain, but they help us handle it better. Confidence, too, is deeply rooted in how we treat ourselves internally. While some believe confidence is something we are either born with or not, it is actually something we build. And self-core plays a crucial role in that process. Every time we encourage ourselves, celebrate small victories, or speak gently when we stumble, we reinforce the belief that we are capable and worthy. Over time, this internal encouragement becomes a steady source of strength. Confidence doesn't mean we never doubt ourselves. It means we trust ourselves enough to keep going even when we do. That trust is built day by day through the tone and content of our self-talk. Moreover, kind inner dialogue creates a safe space within our minds, a place where we can be honest without fear of harsh judgment. This safety is essential for growth. When we know we won't be berated by our own thoughts, we become more willing to take risks, make mistakes, and learn from them. In contrast, if our self-talk is cruel or unforgiving, we become afraid of trying because the cost of failure feels too high. Encouraging self-con provides emotional cushioning that softens the blow of setbacks and gives us the courage to try again, even when we're uncertain. This kind of self-subscription also reduces the emotional burden we carry during stressful times. Life will inevitably present us with moments of loss, rejection, disappointment, or fear. We cannot control many of these external events, but we can control the internal response we give ourselves. A kind inner voice says, "You're doing your best," or "It's okay to feel hurt right now." These words help us process emotions in a healthy way rather than suppressing or exaggerating them. Over time, this leads to greater emotional stability and a deeper sense of self-trust, which are both essential components of lasting resilience and confidence. When we change the way we speak to ourselves, we change the way we interpret the events around us. A key element of positive self-talk is the ability to reframe difficult situations. Reframing doesn't mean denying that a challenge exists. It means choosing to view it from a more constructive angle. For instance, instead of thinking, "I failed and now I've ruined everything," a person practicing positive self-talk might say, "This didn't go as planned, but I can learn something valuable from it." That simple shift in internal dialogue changes the emotional tone of the situation, making it easier to move forward instead of getting stuck in regret or fear. By reframing challenges through positive self-course, we begin to see them not as permanent obstacles, but as temporary moments of growth. This mindset allows us to remain hopeful and solutions curious. When something goes wrong, instead of blaming ourselves or giving up, we become curious. What can I take from this? Or how can I do better next time? These kinds of thoughts lead to action, resilience, and growth. On the other hand, negative self makes us feel helpless and defeated. The ability to reframe a problem into a possibility is one of the most empowering outcomes of mastering our inner voice. Another important benefit of reframing through positive self-core is that it reduces fear and resistance. Often, challenges feel overwhelming not because of their size, but because of how we mentally approach them. If we constantly tell ourselves, "This is too much for me," then our brain begins to believe it. But if we say, "This is tough, but I have handled hard things before," we create a mental space where courage can thrive. Positive self-talk helps us break large challenges into manageable steps and replaces panic with purpose. It gives us the psychological fuel needed to push through discomfort and reach the other side stronger than before. Furthermore, when we get into the habit of reframing challenges, we start to develop a growth uncovered mindset that transforms how we view life in general. Instead of fearing failure, we start to embrace it as a necessary part of improvement. We understand that setbacks are not a sign that we are unworthy, but rather that we are learning, stretching, and evolving. Positive self-confidence helps us find meaning in adversity and gives us the language to describe our experiences with strength rather than defeat. It turns our focus from "Why is this happening to me?" to "What is this teaching me?" A powerful shift that can redefine our entire journey. Our internal dialogue doesn't just stay in our minds. It becomes the framework through which we experience the world. Every thought we repeat to ourselves reinforces a belief, and every belief influences our actions, our decisions, and our view of life. If someone continually tells themselves, "I'm not good enough," that belief begins to shape how they approach relationships, opportunities, and personal goals. They might shy away from new experiences, settle for less, or never fully express their true potential. All because of a repeated internal message. These words, though silent, have real-world consequences. Positive self-talk works by shifting the underlying narrative we live by. When we start to change our thoughts, replacing doubt with encouragement, fear with hope, we begin to notice a shift in our reality. We start showing up differently in our daily lives. We become more confident in our choices, more open to new experiences, and more forgiving of our mistakes. For example, someone who once believed they were too shy to speak up may start to say, "I have something valuable to contribute," and gradually begin to engage more openly in conversations. That small internal change opens the door to new behaviors and ultimately new outcomes. What we tell ourselves also influences how we perceive others and how we interpret situations. A person who engages in negative self-talks might misread neutral events as hostile or threatening because their internal reality is already filled with self-doubt. On the other hand, someone who practices positive self-talks is more likely to see the good in others and find possibilities where others see problems. This change in perception can dramatically affect relationships, performance, and personal happiness. Our thoughts act as a filter, and when that filter is more compassionate and optimistic, life itself begins to feel more manageable and fulfilling. The transformation caused by positive self-thoughts is not magic. It's the result of consistent mental training. Just as our bodies change with regular exercise, our minds change with regular intentional thoughts. The more we practice speaking positively to ourselves, the more natural it becomes, and the more it influences every corner of our lives. Over time, we begin to believe in ourselves on a deeper level. We start making better choices, attracting healthier environments, and striving toward higher goals. All of this starts with a thought, a single intentional message we give to ourselves. And from that message, a new reality begins to unfold. Just like any other skill, the habit of positive self-course requires daily effort and consistency. It's not enough to say kind words to ourselves once in a while. We must train our minds to do it regularly, especially during times of stress, doubt, or failure. This daily repetition begins to rewire our thinking patterns. With each intentional thought, we weaken the grip of our negative inner critic and strengthen the voice of encouragement. Just as a muscle grows stronger through repeated exercise, our mental strength builds through the repeated practice of speaking to ourselves with compassion, patience, and positivity. Over time, this consistent internal reinforcement becomes a reliable support system. Instead of relying solely on others for motivation or reassurance, we learn to uplift ourselves from within. This self-sustaining encouragement becomes especially valuable during difficult moments when outside help may not be available. In those times, the ability to draw strength from our own words can be the deciding factor between giving up and pushing through. The more we practice positive self-talk, the more deeply rooted our confidence and resilience become. We no longer need to seek validation constantly because we've developed the ability to provide it to ourselves. Daily positive self-talk also instills a sense of control over our emotional and mental well-being. While we can control every event or person in our lives, we can control how we respond to them. And our response begins with our thoughts. When we practice choosing better thoughts, we naturally begin to feel calmer, more focused, and more hopeful. This internal control creates a sense of self-empowerment that fuels growth. It reminds us that we are not helpless in the face of adversity, that we have the tools within us to change how we experience and overcome life's obstacles. As the habit of positive self-confidence becomes more deeply ingrained, it reshapes not just our mindset but also our identity. We start to see ourselves not as victims of our circumstances but as active participants in our own development. This empowered self-conscious leads us to take on new challenges, speak up when it matters, and dream bigger dreams. We begin to believe that we are worthy of success, capable of handling pressure, and deserving of joy. All of this begins with simple, repeated words, spoken internally every day. Words that reinforce our strengths, celebrate our efforts, and remind us that we are always growing. In conclusion, the way we speak to ourselves holds immense power. Behind set that uplifts us in every area of life. A journey begins within. VVD, the words we choose in every area of life. So let us speak with kindness, believe in our worth, and shape a reality that reflects the strength and possibilities already inside us.